My child, pause here for a moment, because what is unfolding around your heart right now is not ordinary. You may have arrived here expecting only a few comforting words, but something has been building quietly behind the scenes, and your soulmate is reaching a point where they can no longer keep it hidden. There is a happiness inside them that has been trying to escape through every unfinished sentence, every moment they almost reached for you, every quiet smile they quickly tried to hide. Something has changed, and the beautiful part is this: the change is connected to you. Do not rush away from these words, because the truth is only beginning to open. What they have been carrying is not another burden, not another disappointment, and not another reason for you to question your worth. This time, they are carrying good news, and they have been waiting for the right moment to place it gently into your hands. For some time, you may have felt as though the energy between you and this person was difficult to understand. There were moments of closeness followed by silence, moments when you could almost feel something beautiful approaching, only for everything to become still again. You wondered whether you were imagining the connection. You questioned whether their heart was moving toward you or away from you. You may even have told yourself that you needed to stop hoping so deeply because hope had become exhausting. Yet what you could not see was that their silence was not empty. Behind that silence, decisions were forming. Feelings were becoming clearer. Fears that once controlled them were slowly losing their power. And somewhere in the middle of all of this, something happened that gave them a reason to believe in what the two of you could become. There is something different about the way they have been thinking about you lately. Before, their thoughts may have been tangled with uncertainty. They would imagine speaking honestly to you, then immediately think of every reason they should wait. They would picture a future where you were beside them, then remind themselves of everything that could go wrong. They wanted certainty before taking a step, but love rarely gives certainty before courage. So they remained caught between what their heart knew and what their fear demanded. But something shifted. A moment came when they realized that waiting forever could become its own kind of loss. They began to understand that protecting themselves from vulnerability might also mean protecting themselves from the very happiness they had been asking for. And this realization did not come gently. It arrived during a quiet moment when there was nobody around to distract them from the truth. Perhaps it was late at night. Perhaps they had finished everything they needed to do and suddenly found themselves alone with their thoughts. Your face entered their mind without invitation. A memory returned. Something you once said, something you once did, or simply the way you made them feel seen came rushing back with unexpected strength. They tried to brush it aside, but the emotion remained. Then came a thought that frightened and comforted them at the same time. What if this person really is meant to remain in my life? That question opened a door they could no longer close. From that moment, they began paying attention differently. They remembered the times you showed kindness without asking for anything in return. They noticed the way your presence brought a strange calm even when circumstances were complicated. They remembered small details they had pretended not to notice. Your expressions. Your patience. The way you became quiet when something mattered deeply. The way you tried to stay strong even when your heart was carrying more than you admitted. They began connecting moments together, and the picture that emerged surprised them. They realized this connection had not survived because it was convenient. It had survived misunderstandings, distance, fear, timing, and emotional walls because something within both of you kept refusing to completely let go. But there is more, because their good news is not simply that they finally understand their feelings. That is only the first layer. Something has occurred in their personal world that removed one of the obstacles they believed stood between the two of you. For a long time, they carried a private concern. It may have been practical, emotional, family-related, connected to their future, or connected to a promise they had made to themselves. They believed they needed to resolve that situation before they could approach you with a clear heart. They did not want to arrive in your life bringing confusion and asking you to wait while they figured everything out. Even if they never explained this to you, a part of them wanted to come toward you with something real to offer. Recently, that situation began to move. Something they were waiting on became clearer. A conversation happened. An answer arrived. A responsibility changed. A door that seemed permanently closed began to open. And when it did, their first emotional response was not about themselves. Their mind went directly to you. That is important. Of all the people they could have imagined sharing the moment with, your presence rose first. They pictured your reaction. They wondered how your eyes would change when you heard the news. They imagined the possibility of finally saying, "I have been wanting to tell you this." And for the first time in a long while, the future did not feel like a distant fantasy to them. It felt close enough to touch. My child, you must understand how significant this is. This person has not always been comfortable showing excitement. They have learned to hold emotions inside because life taught them that happiness can disappear quickly. Somewhere along their journey, they became cautious with good news. They learned not to celebrate too early. They learned not to trust every beautiful beginning. They learned to prepare themselves for disappointment before disappointment had even arrived. So when something good happens, they often keep it private until they are certain it cannot be taken away. But this time their joy has become difficult to contain because the news is tied to a desire they have carried far longer than you realize. They have rehearsed telling you. Yes, in their own private way, they have imagined the conversation. They have wondered whether they should be serious or playful. They have thought about sending a simple message, then rejected it because the moment feels too important for ordinary words. They imagined speaking to you face to face, but then nervousness entered their chest. They thought of calling, only to wonder whether their voice would reveal too much before they finished the first sentence. Their heart keeps racing ahead while their mind tries to slow everything down. There is almost something beautiful about their struggle now, because they are no longer struggling against you. They are struggling with how much they want you to know. And there is another reason this matters. For a while, your soulmate wondered whether you had emotionally moved on. They noticed something different in your energy. Maybe you became quieter. Maybe you stopped reaching as often. Maybe your responses changed. Maybe you simply began protecting your peace in ways you had not before. They felt the difference. At first they misunderstood it. A small fear entered them that perhaps they had waited too long. They began wondering whether your heart had finally grown tired of standing near a door they never fully opened. This possibility affected them more deeply than they expected. They tried to act normal, but inside they began replaying everything. The missed opportunities. The words they should have spoken. The moments when you needed reassurance and they gave you uncertainty instead. The times they assumed there would always be another chance. Suddenly, the thought of losing access to your warmth became real. And strange as it may sound, that fear did not push them into panic. It pushed them into clarity. They realized that what they felt for you was not based on your constant availability. It was not simply comfort. It was not attention. It was not habit. When they imagined you moving forward without them, something in their spirit resisted, not with possession, but with recognition. They knew they had something true to say, and remaining silent began to feel more dangerous than speaking. That is why this good news carries another hidden message beneath it. When they finally share what happened, they are also preparing to reveal what you mean to them. The announcement and the emotion have become connected. They cannot tell you one without exposing the other. This is why they have delayed even though they are almost bursting with excitement. They know that once the words leave their mouth, you may finally see what they have been trying to disguise. You may hear tenderness in their voice that they cannot explain away. You may notice how carefully they watch your reaction. You may realize that the news itself is beautiful, but the fact that they chose you as the person they most wanted to tell is even more revealing. There has also been a conversation about you that you were not present for. Your name entered a discussion when this person was trying to understand their next step. Someone close to them noticed the change in their mood. They noticed the secret smiles, the distracted moments, the unusual excitement. At first your soulmate tried to avoid the subject, but eventually something was said that opened the truth. They did not reveal everything, but they admitted enough. They admitted that there is someone whose opinion matters more than they expected. Someone they want beside them when life becomes beautiful, not only when life becomes difficult. Someone they are afraid to lose because the connection has become part of how they imagine their future. The person listening may have asked a simple question that stayed in your soulmate's mind long after the conversation ended. Then why haven't you told them? Your soulmate did not have a good answer. They could name fear, timing, circumstances, pride, confusion. But none of those answers felt strong enough anymore. Something within them knew that eventually excuses become choices, and they no longer wanted silence to choose their future for them. That conversation became another turning point. It was as if hearing the situation spoken aloud removed some of its power. What seemed impossible inside their minds suddenly sounded surprisingly simple when another person reflected it back to them. You care. They care. Something beautiful has changed. Why remain hidden? Yet there is one part of the good news they are still nervous about, because it could change the emotional distance between you much faster than either of you expects. They know that once you hear it, you may begin asking questions. Those questions may lead into subjects they have carefully avoided. Where is this connection going? What do they really want? Why did they wait? What have they been feeling all this time? Are they ready now? These are not small questions, and your soulmate knows the moment is approaching when they cannot hide behind vague answers. There is a truth they have been practicing admitting to themselves before they admit it to you: they want more. Not more attention. Not more temporary comfort. Not more confusing conversations that end without direction. They want more meaning. More honesty. More closeness. More certainty created through action. They are beginning to desire something that feels stable, peaceful, and real. And you are woven into that vision. This does not mean every challenge has disappeared overnight. It means something more important has happened. They are becoming willing to face challenges instead of using them as reasons to run. Your soulmate has spent a long time believing they needed to become completely fearless before choosing love. Now they are discovering that courage is not the absence of fear. It is caring about something enough to move while fear is still whispering. That lesson is transforming them. Where they once saw vulnerability as weakness, they are beginning to understand that allowing you to truly know them may be one of the strongest things they ever do. And heaven has been working through the quiet spaces of this story, not forcing decisions, not controlling hearts, but placing mirrors in front of both of you. Every delay revealed something. Every misunderstanding exposed an insecurity. Every period of silence showed what communication needed to become. Every moment you almost gave up taught you something about your own boundaries. You were not being prepared to endlessly wait for another person. You were being prepared to recognize the difference between chasing love and receiving love when it arrives with clarity. This is why your own energy has been changing too. You may not even realize how much stronger you have become. There was once a version of you who might have accepted half answers simply because you were afraid of losing the connection. You might have ignored your own needs to protect another person's comfort. You might have called confusion, patience, and emotional exhaustion faith. But something inside you has matured. You still love deeply, but you are learning that love does not require you to abandon yourself. You are learning that the right connection should not demand that you shrink your worth. Your soulmate can feel this transformation. That is part of what has drawn them closer. They sense that you are no longer standing still waiting to be chosen. Your energy carries more self-respect now. There is a quiet strength around you that was not as obvious before. And rather than pushing them away, it has made them look at you with new admiration. They realize they cannot approach you casually anymore. They understand that if they want a meaningful place in your life, they need to show up meaningfully. This realization is deeply connected to the news they are holding. Something about this new development has given them an opportunity to show you rather than merely tell you. That is why their excitement feels different. They are not only thinking, "I finally have something wonderful to share." A deeper thought is moving beneath it. Maybe now I can show them that I am serious. And that thought has been growing. They have begun thinking about details. Timing. A place. A conversation. A gesture. They want the way they tell you to communicate something beyond the announcement itself. They want you to feel included. They want you to understand that when something important happened in their life, they did not want to celebrate it without bringing you emotionally into the moment. There is tenderness here that they have not yet learned how to express openly. You may have believed this person was emotionally distant because they did not feel as deeply as you. The truth is more complicated. Sometimes people become distant not because emotion is absent but because emotion feels too large. Your soulmate has experienced moments when the intensity of their feelings frightened them. They were comfortable when everything remained undefined because undefined things can be escaped. Once a connection is named, it becomes real. Once feelings are spoken, they create responsibility. Once someone admits, "You matter to me," they can no longer pretend losing that person would mean nothing. So they kept parts of themselves hidden. But good news has a strange way of exposing the heart. When life finally gives someone something they have prayed, hoped, worked, or waited for, the first person they want to share it with reveals something about where their heart feels at home. And when your soulmate received this shift, this opportunity, this answer, this opening, or this long-awaited development, your name came into their heart almost instantly. They tried to tell themselves they should wait. They tried to stay calm. They tried to focus on practical things first. But their mind kept returning to the same picture, you hearing the news. They imagine your smile. They imagine relief in your face. They imagine that perhaps this is the conversation that finally breaks the old pattern between you. Because the good news is connected to something you once discussed. There was a hope, possibility, or dream that passed between you at some point. Maybe it was mentioned directly. Maybe it appeared indirectly in the way you spoke about the future. At the time, it may have seemed unrealistic. Circumstances were different then. Your soulmate may even have dismissed it because acknowledging how much they wanted it would have revealed too much. But they remembered. More importantly, they began quietly working towards something that could make that possibility more real. You were not aware of every step. There were moments they almost told you but decided they did not want to raise your hopes before anything was certain. They wanted evidence first. They wanted something solid enough to place before you. So while you interpreted their silence as emotional distance, part of that silence was hiding movement. There were setbacks. At least once, they believed the opportunity might disappear. That moment affected them badly. They became quieter. More withdrawn. Perhaps you sensed their mood change without understanding why. They did not want to explain because explaining would require admitting how connected the outcome was to their hopes involving you. Then something unexpected happened. A door reopened. An answer changed. A person reconsidered. A circumstance shifted. And suddenly what seemed delayed was moving again. This is where the story becomes even more interesting, because your soulmate did something differently this time. Instead of immediately assuming the worst, they allowed themselves to believe the possibility could work. They chose hope. That may sound small, but for someone who has protected themselves through pessimism, hope is an act of vulnerability. They let themselves picture you beside them. And when they did, they felt peace. Not excitement alone. Peace. That feeling surprised them. They realized that when they imagine certain people in their future, the emotion feels complicated. When they imagine you, beneath all the fear and history, there is a strange calm. It feels like something within them says, "This could become home if you stop running from it." Those words have been echoing through their spirit. This could become home. And now they are beginning to understand why the good news had to arrive when it did. Had it arrived earlier, they might have celebrated alone. They might have treated it as another achievement, another opportunity, another private victory. But because of everything this connection has taught them, their first desire is now to share. You changed something inside them without forcing it. Not by chasing. Not by proving. Not by performing. Simply by being present in a way that touched parts of them they kept hidden from most people. You made them feel understood in moments when they barely understood themselves. There were things you noticed that others missed. There were silences you did not immediately judge. There were moments when you could have used their vulnerability against them but chose gentleness instead. They remember. Your soulmate remembers far more than they admit. And their good news carries gratitude inside it. Part of them wants to look at you and say, "You were there before this happened." Those words matter. Because they have begun separating the people who love what they can offer from the people who valued them while they were still uncertain. They have become more aware of who appears only when life looks impressive and who cared when nothing was guaranteed. Your presence stands out. That has changed the way they view you. They no longer see you as simply someone they feel drawn toward. They are beginning to see you as someone they can trust with the real parts of life. But there is one thing they still do not know. They do not know how you will respond. That uncertainty is the final wall. They wonder whether your heart is still open. They wonder whether too much time has passed. They wonder whether you will smile, become quiet, or ask the question they secretly hope you will ask. They imagine different versions of the conversation repeatedly. In one version, they tell you and you immediately understand what the news means for the two of you. In another, you remain cautious, and they realize they will have to finally speak more directly than they ever have before. And there is one version they keep returning to late at night, the version where you look at them and say something simple that makes all their fear disappear. They do not know whether that moment will happen. But they are preparing themselves to risk finding out. This is important for you, my child. When the moment arrives, do not feel that you must become a different version of yourself to receive it. You do not need perfect words. You do not need to hide your emotions. You do not need to pretend you never felt hurt by the uncertainty that came before. Real beginnings do not require false perfection. If something genuine is being offered, it should be able to survive honest conversation. You are allowed to listen. You are allowed to feel. You are allowed to ask. You are allowed to receive good news without immediately fearing what will go wrong next. Your past may have trained you to question beautiful moments. Every time something good began, part of you may have searched for the hidden problem. That was once how you protected yourself. But not every open door is hiding a trap. Sometimes a beautiful moment is simply a beautiful moment asking you to be present enough to experience it. And something beautiful is approaching this connection. Your soulmate is closer to speaking than you think. There has been a recent moment when they nearly contacted you. Their hand hovered over the message. Their thoughts became loud. They wrote something, changed it, erased part of it, and considered trying again later. Not because they changed their mind about telling you, but because the emotion behind the message felt too important to squeeze into casual words. They wanted you to hear their voice. That realization changed their plan. They began thinking of a more personal way. And here is where the hidden layer becomes even stronger. They are not only preparing to tell you what happened. They are preparing to ask you something afterward. That question is what truly makes them nervous. The good news is the doorway. The question is what waits beyond it. They know once they ask, the connection cannot return completely to the old pattern. The answer may create a new chapter. It may require both of you to decide whether you are willing to move from feeling into action, from possibility into intention, from silent understanding into spoken truth. Your soulmate has delayed asking because they wanted the circumstances around them to change first. Now those circumstances are changing. The excuse they depended on is disappearing. And when an excuse disappears, a choice remains. They know this. That is why their heart has been restless. That is why you may have been feeling strange.